or co-founder of Citrea. Welcome.
Hey, Peter, how are you?
I'm excited to have more Bitcoin projects on the podcast, and Citrea is one of those
Yes,
really promising ones.
thank
Um,
you.
let's start there. Actually, let's start with your origin story because I think people's backgrounds inform what they end up doing in their entrepreneurial journey. And so, how'd you get
hmm
into crypto? Maybe we can begin there.
Yeah, it sounds great. So how did I get into crypto? It was actually quite recent. Like it's obviously not recent now, but it was 5, 6 years ago. So my brother was always telling me about Bitcoin mining. He was just buying and selling Bitcoin from I think 2016. But I thought like, bro, it's a scam. Just like forget about it. Don't do anything like dangerous. Don't use my credit card, etc. It was the beginning of my journey. But once I get into college in 2019, I realized actually like some people are developing stuff around it because I studied computer engineering. I was also very close to software development, distributed systems, and I realized this is actually like a technology, not just like a scam trading stuff. And the first hands-on experience of me was one day I was sitting at home, my WhatsApp group just pinged, and someone from my class pinged the group basically saying that, oh, I'm attending a blockchain hackathon. Is there anyone who know how to write smart contracts? And back then I was doing internship for some venture capital companies and like some fintech companies, and there I got interested to Solidity, learned a bit about like how to write NFT contracts, etc. And I just said to him, okay, I will come with you, I know a bit. And that was my kind of first hands-on deep dive crypto stuff, because before that I was just fully isolated doing stuff on my own. Don't have a Twitter account, don't know what's Ethereum and other stuff, just know Solidity as a programming language. But yeah, later that guy that pinged the group become my CTO at the moment in this company. After the hackathon, we worked together in some companies. I did smart contract development. He was doing quant and like trading stuff in general, algorithmic trading, MEV. And then after that, we got together with two more of our college friends. And four of us co-founded our company, current company called Chainway Labs. It's the company that's building Citrea. And yeah, maybe I can go from there if you want. But yeah, in the early days of the company, we built around privacy on Ethereum. We worked on something called proof of innocence, then become privacy pools, which recently launched. We
Mhm.
helped protocol development stuff. But yeah, lately, I think 2 years ago, ordinals come to Bitcoin, and then we
Mhm.
got more and more interested to Bitcoin, and that basically lighted our journey in Bitcoin. And after that, there was some other projects, and there was Citrea, and for the last almost 2 years, we have been just working on Citrea nonstop.
Maybe I could give you a maybe I could just tease that up a little bit. So you've
Yeah.
described Citrea as Bitcoin's first ZK rollup. So for listeners who aren't tech experts, how would you explain in simple terms what that means and why making
Yes.
Bitcoin more programmable is important or a big deal?
hmm Yeah, the ZK rollup is basically how we make Bitcoin programmable. Uh, but in an ideal world, it's not the important piece. But currently, it's important because so far people think Bitcoin is a very limited blockchain where you can only send and receive Bitcoin, and that's the whole functionality, right? That caused some issues. Mainly, the lack of scalability around these payments and customizability led to use of custodians. In the last cycle, we saw BlockFi, Celsius, and others basically that you can deposit your Bitcoin. It's very easy to use, but you don't actually own the Bitcoin in that platforms. That was the one weakness of Bitcoin. And the second is people wanted to use their Bitcoin in DeFi, and then they have to move their Bitcoin to over Ethereum, which still uses custodians like Rep Bitcoin, like TBTC, right? They use Bitco, so they actually trust another company to hold their Bitcoin, which still involves the trust. But over these years, like the last 10 years, show us that people actually want to use their Bitcoin. Buy and hold is one strategy. But even if holding on Bitcoin is really hard, have you ever used like a Bitcoin wallet? It's really painful to use
Mhm.
those wallets. And then we realized, okay, what if we can actually make Bitcoin more usable? And that is tied to be making Bitcoin more programmable, because if you are making it programmable, then you can have account abstraction, like very easy to use smart contract accounts, spending limits, social recovery. Those kind of stuff can be added on top. And then we started researching ways around how to make Bitcoin programmable. And basically, a ZK rollup is the best way of doing it because it doesn't involve any trust assumption rather than the math. ZK basically allows us to mathematically prove that something happened on Citrea and then verify that result on Bitcoin, which means if you are already trusting Bitcoin, which means if you have a Bitcoin node, then this doesn't include any other trust assumption. It's just pure math that you are doing, and then Bitcoin becomes programmable without changing Bitcoin, without introducing more complexities. We just build the system, you transact on top, you do DeFi on top, you hold your Bitcoin there, you have very advanced social recovery and other features, and everything you do is actually getting verified on Bitcoin. So it has almost the same level of security with Bitcoin. And basically, a ZK rollup is how we are doing this, all of the stuff.
And what's the technical? I guess I'm familiar with Ethereum rollups, and a lot
Yes.
in the Ethereum space. There's rollup as a service becomes a really important part of the infrastructure. That's why it's so easy to create a rollup, because you just it takes 5 to 10 minutes to create a rollup through these services. What is creating a rollup like on Bitcoin? What is that like?
Yeah, it's painful. It took us like more than 2 years to actually come this stage. We are still on testnet. We are getting very close to mainnet, by the way, but it's a really hard process because building a rollup, a ZK rollup involves two processes. One is the rollup that actually needs to push their blocks to the Bitcoin L1, like any L1, any rollup on any L1 needs to push their data to the underlying chain. And the second is underlying chain needs to verify the proofs so that Bitcoin can move between the L1 and L2. So these two advancements actually happened in the last 2 years in Bitcoin that enabled Citrea. The first one was ordinals. With ordinals, we realized we can actually use Bitcoin blocks to embed arbitrary data. In the early days, it was JPEGs. People were putting taproot wizards. People were putting like any image on they want to Bitcoin L1. But that time we realized those images are just bytes, like they're just numbers. And what if we can actually put a rollup data instead of an image to the Bitcoin blocks? That is the first kind of prerequisite of building a rollup. And we could actually satisfy that now with all the other things happened around Bitcoin, mainly the Taproot upgrade in 2021 and then the invention of ordinals in 2023.
When you say rollup data, you're talking about you push the hash to a Bitcoin block. Is that correct?
Yeah, not the hash actually, the full compressed transaction data. All the rollups push their all transaction data to any data availability layer. For some rollups, it's Ethereum. For some rollups, it's Avail. For some rollups, it's Celestia. And for us, it's Bitcoin.
Oh, got it. Okay, so that's
Yes,
one way to think about this. It's the data availability
exactly, on Bitcoin.
is on Bitcoin. I see. Okay, that's fascinating.
Yes,
And
yes, that's
how
the
is
first piece.
okay, that's the first piece. The second piece is the verifying the proof.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that is happening through something called BitVM. That paper also I think released 1.5 years ago. A Bitcoin researcher called Robin Linus, he released a paper basically showing that we can actually verify a proof on Bitcoin bit by bit. Because the whole proof verification is not small enough to fit into Bitcoin blocks. But he realized we can actually connect them bit by bit, just like a circuit off chain, and then verify the necessary parts on chain so that this gives us a ZK verification. And then the second iteration of BitVM called BitVM2 released last year. And then after BitVM2, all the contributors around BitVM said that, okay, guys, we are just like pushing separately. Let's form an alliance. And right now there's something called BitVM Alliance, which we are one of the founding members of it, is pushing the production ready implementation for the BitVM. And BitVM is essentially a ZK verification algorithm on Bitcoin, which is very complex, involves a lot of signature algorithms, a lot of fraud proofs, but it works. We actually, I think by the time this is uploaded, we may release on testnet. We actually got the releases. We are now deploying it. So it will be a first time Bitcoin layer 2 will get verified on Bitcoin using ZK. That's the advantage of that's the main thing that BitVM provides, and it's definitely one of the two things that was necessary to create this rollup, and that's now available. It's also audit ready, so it will be production ready in a couple of months.
I've been speaking with many ZK projects in the last few months. Just in the last couple of weeks, I met with Uma Roy from Succinct, Rob Viglione from ZK Verify, Polyhedra, many others. And I wonder if Citrea could work with any of these other projects, even though they're not in the Bitcoin ecosystem, but they're still ZK projects.
Yes, exactly. We are actually working with one. We are working with Risk Zero.
Okay.
So Risk Zero, Succinct, and other alternatives, they provide the proving infrastructure, right? They provide the proof. The Bitcoin is just a verification, and BitVM provides the verification. So we are actually composing with all the other tooling built besides Bitcoin. Our rollup code base is a Rust code base that we can easily prove in Risk Zero. So we are using it. And finally, our rollup is using Ethereum Virtual Machine, which is just EVM, Solidity Smart Contract, MetaMask wallet. You can just use all of these toolings. We prove it in Risk Zero and verify on Bitcoin. So it's actually pretty modular and composable, that we can use all the other elements not built on specifically for Bitcoin. And just with a single ZK proof, we can actually bond that technology to Bitcoin and make it available for Bitcoiners.
Well, what about ZK Verify? I mean, they're in the job of verifying proofs. Could they be a potential partner? I'm just thinking because I just met with them and
I don't know the technical stuff behind the project, but in general, the verification is where we get the security. And verifying on Bitcoin means that we are getting security from Bitcoin, because all the Bitcoin full nodes is actually verifying the proof now. So that's kind of like the main advantage for using Bitcoin as verification layer. I think if we switch to another verification layer, we won't be a Bitcoin rollup anymore. We will be something else, which will diverge from what use case we imagine is the best for us to build in the space.
Yeah, I am really excited for this. What people are calling the Bitcoin Renaissance. Bitcoin is.
Yes.
I mean, that's where it all started, and that's where I think. I think as it becomes more programmable with projects like Citrea, and we unlock the potential for DeFi on Bitcoin, it could really grow the crypto space, the Web3 space.
Yeah, in general, think about Ethereum, right? People are building projects on Ethereum, which uses Ethereum as collateral, let's say stablecoin projects, and they grow actually like quite big, like millions of dollars. And now map that same thing to Bitcoin. It's crazy big assets, like compared to Ethereum and like the rest of the crypto. The dominance today is, I think, around 60%, which means the whole crypto just represents 2/3 of Bitcoin, and Ethereum is even lower in that scale, and Ethereum DeFi TVL is much, much lower than that. So once you map the exact same infrastructure like we are building to Bitcoin, the potential liquidity, the potential user base you are getting is very, very large. Like it's not even comparable with Ethereum, Solana, or whatever chain.
Yeah. What do you think? So let's talk about that for a quick second. So I met with Lombard and Babylon and other projects in the Bitcoin DeFi space, BTC-Fi. And one kind of psychological aspect of BTC holders is that they don't want to do anything with their Bitcoin. They hold Bitcoin and then they store it in their cold storage, and they don't want to do anything with it. So on the one hand, the potential for DeFi if Bitcoin becomes a major part of DeFi, we can see the TVL really, really growing massively. But at the same time, there's kind of a psychological aspect to this because a lot of BTC holders don't want to touch their Bitcoin. So how do you think about that as you kind of approach your go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, I think it's an assumption, because more local Bitcoiners that you see on Twitter on conferences are maxis, and you don't always know who are the biggest Bitcoin holders, right? Or who are like those people are not coming to the conferences maybe. Or think about like all the crypto people, even though like the Ethereum people, Solana people, most of them started their journey with Bitcoin, and almost all of them hold Bitcoin somewhere. This is either in cold storage like Ledger, or it's an exchange like Binance. Almost everyone in crypto holds Bitcoin, but it's underutilized. So I think just mapping Bitcoiners to like a single ideology, or they don't touch their Bitcoin, is incorrect. I think Bitcoin by vision created to become a money, right? And money needs to be used. That's the whole point of Bitcoin. If you don't use Bitcoin, the block rewards will go zero, and then the hash rate will go down, and then the Bitcoin become vulnerable. So if you want actually Bitcoin to survive, Bitcoin needs to be used. That's the technical part. But the Satoshi's vision was a peer-to-peer electronic cash. It's not like a digital gold in the paper. They say it's an electronic cash, and it needs to be used in financial activities such as DeFi. So I think assuming that no Bitcoiner touched their Bitcoin is just not correct. Most people in crypto use crypto daily. They have Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is probably the only asset they cannot use at the moment. And I'm betting that if they have ability to use their Bitcoin in DeFi, just like they use on their Ethereum DeFi, they have almost no reason to use Ethereum or Solana at all at this point.
Do you see Citrea as something the average Bitcoin holder will interact with directly, or do you see it as more behind the scenes, powering Bitcoin apps?
Hopefully, the second. Hopefully, we become so abstracted that people only know about applications built on top of Citrea and not the infrastructure itself. Last year, we launched saying ourselves the first ZK rollup on Bitcoin. That was important to actually say that we are actually like a technical team. We know what we are building, and this is something real. But right now, we have our incubation program called Citrea Origins, incubating applications. We call them BAPs, Bitcoin applications. It's a funny abbreviation. Uh,
I like
and
that.
the main thing is they are next generation of Bitcoin applications. They are not custodial. They don't have like a very bad UX on UI. They are very modern, using latest technologies that's enabled by Citrea. And they directly serve to the end users, so that hopefully end users will only know about the applications. They will use them without trusting anyone. And behind the scenes, Citrea will be the engine that's powering all of those. That's why our marketing is specifically towards application developers. We work with them really close. I probably spend 80% of my time working with founders in the ecosystem, because we want to create the best user experience for Bitcoiners. And that should happen through applications. Using the chain just purely for send and receive is something, but even some good wallets and fintech applications can abstract that and provide much better experience than using MetaMask, for example.
Yeah, I've always said that, when I speak with founders and application developers, the value of the underlying chain, whether it be a layer one or a roll up, is really the sum of all the applications on top of it. And but a lot of people kind of forget that. I think for two reasons. One reason is a lot of these layer ones actually don't have very many projects on it or applications, and the ones that are in the layer ones with applications don't have a lot of users, and so people kind of default back to the underlying chain.
Yes.
What is really interesting about Citrea as a roll up on Bitcoin, it's the first of its kind. And so being the
Yeah.
first in a brand new category of ZK rollups on Bitcoin, pretty fascinating. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been studying a lot. I've known for a while, but have been reviewing, new I've been studying categories in marketing, categories just in business. And the first company in any new category tends to become the winner. And Citrea is the first in this brand new category of ZK rollups on Bitcoin. Is carries you a long way there, and I think that's pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
Hopefully we win by providing the best experience and applications to users, not just because we are the first.
Yeah.
But that's why we are not just like sitting back, getting relaxed and saying that, oh, we are the first, just like, okay, people will use it. We spend a lot of time for the ecosystem developments and to provide best UX for users, create most useful applications, not the applications that will just farm and dump you, but the actual applications that people want to use and they need in their real life. Most people in the world, they don't have access to USD, they don't have access to bank. I'm based in Turkey. The inflation here is crazy. People don't want to hold Turkish lira. If you hold USD, there's tax and bunch of stuff. And Bitcoin is a way to exit from all this stuff. And in this current form, it's not enough. And Citrea is created to just like overcome those stuff that makes Bitcoin hard to use, so that it's easy, people can easily use it, and then we reach to more users in the world that's not crypto native, doesn't know anything about crypto, but actually need Bitcoin to live their lives.
You mentioned part of your go-to-market strategy for Citrea is focusing on developers, and getting them on board first, and then forming strategic partnerships. How do you balance your work between the two to drive
Yeah.
adoption? I'm looking at the ecosystem page on the website, and it looks like there's about 22 to 25 projects right now. I guess what portion of these are established projects versus upstarts that are small independent developers building on top of
Yes.
Citrea?
So I think in the current ecosystem page, almost all you see is the infrastructure that is needed to create applications such as data indexers, RPC endpoints, oracles, vault providers. That is like the first thing that we established since our DevNet launch last summer. And now I think compared to what we try to do, like try to onboard from other ecosystems versus have native applications, is almost fully opinionated towards native applications. Uh, we don't think multi-chain applications are capable of providing best experience for your user base because they actually are a separate user category that you cannot treat as same as like a Solana degen, right? You cannot have a UI where all the Solana degens and Bitcoiners who never touched crypto using the same interface. It's impossible to get them use that interface and understand that interface. And we realize most of the multi-chain teams is not putting enough efforts to fix that problem in the space. So we decided, okay, what? We will just like have visionally aligned people that believes like the same vision as us, like the hyper Bitcoinization, Bitcoin as money, and then build around that specifically for Bitcoiners and for Bitcoin. So I think we are fully opinionated towards that. I don't think an ecosystem in our stage should be credible, natural, or chase for like third party to people to just like come and deploy, but it should be very opinionated towards your user base, like the go-to-market user base, which is Bitcoiners. So we are very, very opinionated towards that. Today, actually, right at the moment we are now recording this, one of the applications we incubated is going public, publicly launched. It's called Tanari. It's like an account abstraction wallet that allows you to access Bitcoin finance without needing to know what's happening behind the scenes, what am I using, which chain am I using. They are fully abstracted so that you actually sign transactions with Face ID. There is no seed phrase, there is no private key. There's only biometrics that you use to sign transactions, and it's sync across your device using passkeys. So this was something that you could never build on Bitcoin before, and now you are actually building this. And this is probably the best Bitcoin fintech app that cannot steal your money.
What is the name?
It's
Tonari?
called Tanari. Yes,
How do you spell that?
it's Tanari.
Got it.
I will send the links. Yeah, if you always like go to Stray account, you will see in our Twitter that we are always highlighting the developers building on our ecosystem.
Yeah.
That was one of the most exciting ones that we have been working for quite some time, and now they're opening their blog and like their web page that people can read about it.
I love it.
I just tweeted like this is the reason we are building Citrea. And there are many more applications in the incubation program. That's also a reason for us to build Citrea that will provide better access to Bitcoin and build around Bitcoin.
Now, attracting developers to your rollup is really hard work. How are you doing? How is Citrea attracting developers, and Um, yeah, I guess what's the developer acquisition there?
Yeah, I think there are like a couple different strategies in the space overall. Obviously, like the most established chains with large treasuries go with grants, like very large grants. That's maybe even
Mhm.
sometimes bigger than our own funding, and that's probably not enough, creating not enough kind of skin in the game for
Mhm.
builders. And also, it requires a very large treasury, which we skip that basically. And the second thing is just like what we are doing, um, go after developers on every platform that's building on Ethereum, building on Solana, building on other chains, and tell a bit about the tooling and more the vision. Because most builders in the space, it's like you think about Ethereum OGs, they were all Bitcoiners in the past. Even Justin Drake, like he hates Bitcoin, but he was organizing Bitcoin meetups before Ethereum was created. So all of these people were actually Bitcoiners before. They love Bitcoin. And once they realized that the things that they couldn't build on Bitcoin, so that they pivoted to build on Ethereum, is now available to build on Bitcoin. So that's one thing that's just like lights the developers, so that they think, okay, this actually aligns with what I got into the space for the first moment, and now I'm actually do that on Citrea, and the tooling is easy enough for me to do this. So that's kind of like the overall strategy that we are following, just like talking about the tooling available here, talking about how our vision is and how we are supporting developers, not for just like tech, but also the go-to-market, co-marketing, fundraising, and everything. That's why I spend so much time. My background is in engineering, so I can do product quite easily.
Mhm.
But I'm also running the BD growth marketing side of things at Citrea for almost 2 years.
Mhm.
So I can provide some valuable feedback to those applications that can also play the same playbook as Citrea, and then launch and then build their product and get their initial users.
Every roll up, every chain needs at some point, one huge winner that will
Mhm.
then attract, it becomes the magnet for other application developers to come to your chain. And Tanari looks to it. I mean, I've never heard of it until now, but it looks very, very promising and really exciting. How is when I do a transaction in Tanari, how are they using Citrea underneath?
Yeah, it's actually the moment you create, let's say, sign up, you click sign up in the app, it deploys a smart contract account on Citrea using EIP 7720, which is like a very new way of doing smart contract accounts on Citrea. And then at the moment, your account is actually a programmable account on Citrea. And then you pick a username, and then anyone can simply send you Bitcoin, and then you hold in your wallet, and once you click send, it will ask for whom to I send, which amount I sent, and then it asks for your biometrics to actually sign the transactions, because it uses a curve that's not the default curve of Ethereum, the signature curve, that's actually used in, for example, Apple Secure Enclave to actually sign transactions inside the hardware, so that it's fully biometric access. You cannot get, even if your phone is stolen, you have advanced social recovery such as ZK email, family, guardians that you can recover your accounts. But otherwise, there is no way that someone can steal your money by getting your secret key or getting your seed phrase, because they don't exist.
This is really cool. And as far as Citrea doesn't have a live token, correct? Right.
Yes,
Okay.
Citrea doesn't have a token. Citrea uses Bitcoin as the gas token. So it's also EVM compatible. Think about you open MetaMask and instead
Mhm.
of ETH, you see Bitcoin there.
As a data availability layer for Bitcoin, first of all, is that a correct way to describe what
Yes.
Citrea? Okay. How is Citrea? I guess tell us about the fees and how Citrea is I guess accruing value.
Yeah. So the Bitcoin DA is one of the most limited DAs in the space. I think the most, that for sure, probably.
Yeah.
So it is
Highly
compared to,
valuable. Hugely
yeah, that
valuable.
exactly, and that value brings security, right? Obviously, modern blockchains like Celestia has different ways to get security, such as data availability sampling, light nodes, etc. But traditional blockchains like Bitcoin, the only way for you to get a security is use that block space and have a full node ready. And Bitcoin by far has the most number of full nodes around the world. It's very distributed, it's decentralized, it's proven, it's secure, so that block space is valuable. You have to pay to get into the block space. And the logic behind Citrea is it's a rollup. It means it bundles transactions. And that bundling gets us some advantages such as compression. We use something called state diffs, which basically says that, for example, if you do a trade on Uniswap, let's say Bitcoin USDC pool, and if I also do another trade in that same pool in the same proving interval, our transactions are overlapped so that they are not double counted. Instead, they are merged, and now they generate less data than an individual transaction, so that this compression brings us less fees. So if you try to, even though let's say Bitcoin is EVM compatible, using Citrea will be much cheaper because we bundle transactions. And then that fee is shared among thousands of people and transactions. So it's much less. I don't think we will compete with Solana, Arbitrum, or whatever in the level of fees. But the security wise, it will be definitely much more secure than those stuff because it's right on top of Bitcoin. It's almost as secure as Bitcoin. So that security comes with a cost. That's why the main applications we think will be highly valuable applications. It won't be a meme coin launchpad. It will be probably a Bitcoin-backed stablecoin, Bitcoin lending borrowing tool, like applications like Tanari, private payments, RWA. I think those kind of high-value stuff needs to be on Citrea. But we have some other engineering efforts to make everything possible. The one was our partnership with Celestia, which enables people to deploy their app chains that using Celestia DA, so they are much more scalable and cheap. And in the longer term, we have something called volition model, which is a very technical concept. I don't want to just deep dive there, but it basically allows us to have subcent transactions still using Bitcoin as the native assets.
That's fascinating. I didn't know about the partnership with Celestia.
Yeah, it's something that we announced, I think, a month or two ago. It basically allows you to just spin off a layer 3 on Citrea. You can think like an app chain that still uses Bitcoin through Citrea, but all the data goes to Celestia, so it's quite cheap and
I see.
scalable.
And I think the modular approach gives developers more options.
Exactly. If you want to deploy a perp DEX, maybe deploying on Citrea is not the best thing that you can do, but you can easily deploy it as an L3 on Citrea that uses Celestia DA, which gives you subcent fees, unlimited, almost unlimited gas, and you still use Bitcoin as the main asset.
Let's go back to developer marketing. I'm looking at the origins.citrea.xyz.
Yes.
And this is the how would you describe the Origins program? Is that the developer acquisition, developer
It's
grant
yeah.
program? Okay.
It's not a grant program, or don't say it's an acquisition program. It's an incubation program.
Incubation.
Yes, incubation/acceleration, I guess, because most of the founders that we work is very, very early stage. Like the Tanari team, once we start working together, they didn't even have, let's say, the product wireframes or whatever. They just knew that they want to build something that will make Bitcoin finance easier. And then we start working together. So it's, I will say, not based on projects, but based on people. Because, like I said, vision is not something that projects can align, but people can actually align very easily. So all the founders we work, they start working with us in very early stage, pre-seed even, that kind of stage. They are just sharing the same vision of us. So it's more like an incubation. But obviously, we are definitely open to accept more people who actually build something and not happy about how they are doing with the other chain, for example, or they want to move that infrastructure to Bitcoin from Ethereum or other chains. We are definitely open to talk with those people as well. But generally, so far, it was very early stage, I would say.
And on the Origin site, one of the questions I was going to ask you was, what types of applications does Citrea unlock? And you already answered that by explaining that probably not meme coins, but it's going to be really high value applications like Tanari, and as well as other payment applications, maybe a stable coin based on Bitcoin, which would be really amazing.
Yes.
And really high value applications like that. And you explain that on the origins.citrea.xyz website. This is really exciting, Orkun.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. I'm still like it's been 2 years, but we don't have a mainnet at the moment. We are
Yeah.
still working on testnet for quite some time. But if you ask me, I'm still as excited as the night that we got the idea with my founders, because it's something that I really think is valuable in the space. You interview a lot of founders who is doing very valuable stuff, but on the other side, crypto is just full of useless applications. So it's created for like just 1 week hype cycle, um, and building something that's more long term and then actually useful is what makes me happy. That's why I'm also very excited about it.
And I love that you're building on Bitcoin and you're using ZK, which is highly reliable, mathematically proven. You're building on Bitcoin, and the types of applications that this could unlock will be very exciting.
Yes,
And
hopefully it will be.
yeah,
Tanner is just one of them, but there are a couple of them still getting like probably in a couple of weeks getting out of stealth. It will be much more exciting.
out of stealth. Tell us about the on the origin side on the very bottom, there's two hacker house links. I just spoke with Naruto from Avail, and we talked at length about hacker houses as a way to bring awareness,
Mhm.
developer awareness, as well as to bring independent developers on uh, to start building on your project.
Yes.
What was your experience with the hacker houses?
So there are two links, but we did one of them is happy hour, but we did actually two real hacker houses. One was in Bangkok during DevCon. It was great. We accepted hackers outside, basically based on applications. We invited a couple of people, but it was basically outside developers coming and hacking on Citrea, and they built really cool stuff from privacy to NFTs to DeFi. That was important for us because it was early days of testnet and it was a real moment in person that we got feedback on what we are building. Obviously, like in podcast we are talking and it's really exciting, but hearing that from developers and also the bad side of things, like, oh, this RPC doesn't work, like your indexer sucks,
Hmm.
whatever. This is really helpful for that early stage project. And so it was really exciting. But we did another one 2 weeks ago in Istanbul. We hosted teams that's actually building in this Stray Origins at the moment. We rented a really cool penthouse in Istanbul that's with like full Bosphorus view. There were unlimited kebabs and baklavas, so everyone was happy. So that was really interesting because both them and I realized like building together in person with the same vision just accelerates many things because those developers also interact with each other, learn what they're building, so they got maybe integrate their products or they become more opinionated towards what they actually want to do, and if what they do they can compose with other products. So I think just like a building an ecosystem is not just about the technical stuff, but the hacker house especially is important to align the vision for everyone, become more composable, and create maybe shared distribution channels. So it was really, really helpful and fun, of course.
What was your experience like at DevCon with being a Bitcoin focused project?
Yeah, it was interesting because I think last year there were a lot of scammy Bitcoin L2s around. Maybe you see, especially after we launched and like the Bitcoin paper came out, there are a lot of opportunities projects come out and like say, oh, we are a Bitcoin L2, buy our token. And then that narrative was about the DAI back then in DevCon. So most people were a bit skeptical. If I need to be transparent, but once I talk about the technical stuff behind the project, like how much effort we do put in and how we actually understand what we are building, we are not like bullshitting, right? So once they actually hear that, they become okay. Then this is really interesting. I want to see the code base, and it's fully open source so that they can go and read. So that was also important for us to acquire developer and like more broader kind of compose with the other people. Our background is in Ethereum, so we built privacy on Ethereum. We know almost all the ZK developers on Ethereum, so they are aware of what we are building. But even for other people, I think they become more close to that Bitcoin mindset, because now they see that actually what they're doing on Ethereum is possible on Bitcoin. So why not also use it or build on it? So we get a lot of positive feedback. But the beginning of my talks with like many people that never heard about Bitcoin altcoins were very, very skeptical.
Yeah. Let's talk about the name Citrea.
Yes.
And like, what's your approach to brand building? And there seems to be kind of a citrus theme
Mhm.
in Citrea with Citrea,
Yes.
clementine, kumquat, that.
Yeah, so the Citrea name obviously comes from citrus. That's because Bitcoin always reminds orange, because the logo color and like everything, we call it orange chain sometime, right? So the citrus actually comes from that. And the one thing that we really cared during the initial marketing process is just something that we can create an ecosystem around. Because even that time we knew that we are not building a product, but we are building an ecosystem which is a product of products, like a basically a shell product over all of them, right? So the citrus was a good name because it's a family name. It's not like an individual element in some family. It's not like orange, or it's not like kumquat. It's the citrus family. And under it, we created obviously sub brands like Clementine, which is our bridge name. There's Kumquat, our first bridge name. There's Tangerine, our second fork's name. So it's like going like that. And one of our ecosystem projects called themselves Satsuma, which is a member of Citrus family again. So that was the reason. And for brand building, I think I learned a lot during the process, because it was also my first time doing marketing, branding stuff. And I realized people has like some biases towards some things, and then orange, citrus, creating a family, creating sub products. It was just highlighting the brand itself, and I really liked it because it creates like a something in people's heads that they always keep that in mind, because they see a lot of stuff that just calls the Citrea citrus narrative.
I think it's really brilliant what you and the team have done. And you're exactly right. Like there's so much noise out there, and you want to penetrate through the noise, create something that people can recognize and remember. And
Yes.
also you want to add not just recognize and remember, but can they have a feeling about the thing? And everyone has smelled an orange. Everyone has tasted an
Yes.
orange. And in the number of sub brands you can create from the citrus family is enormous. So there's a lot of potential extensions you can create from the
Mhm.
Citrea name. I think it's really smart what you guys have done. You've created a really
Thank you.
good foundation.
Thank you. Yeah, it's still in the early days of the brand. We are experimenting a lot of stuff, but it's really good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. What about as you think about skeptics that maybe one criticism you might hear is, Bitcoin is this really archaic architecture. You can't do anything on it. People that built ordinals, they got lucky. Um, and it's still not very programmable or usable. And what Citrea is doing is really nice and really good, but it's probably not going to work. So I'm just going to stick with Solana or Ethereum or some other layer one. Like,
Yeah.
what's your response to skeptics?
I think like we are here for long term, right? I don't need to show them during the launch we have billion TVL, we have like billion active addresses. Those are not real metrics. Those are usually fake, to fake people's attention. And we don't want to do that. We want to be as organic as possible, even during our launch. If we have less TVL than most projects claim to Bitcoin out to, that's fine, as long as it's utilized actually in DeFi, people actually using that TVL. It's not like a TVL that's coming to the DEX, sitting there, but no one is actually trading on the DEX. So it's just like LP's money. It doesn't mean anything to us. So what we try to do is just like create an organic ecosystem where people is actually using, and then the liquidity will obviously need to be scaled as the time goes. And once we reach to that point where the organic growth is in the stage that everyone can take it, like just look and see, and that's actually happening, I think that moment people will be less skeptical and maybe try to use the chain. Also, if there's good on ramps and applications ready for them to be used. it was same for Solana as well, right? In the early days, I think it was really pumped artificially before FTX crash. And I think after FTX, it's kind of like the organic state. But the growth after that point was almost fully organic. I firsthand kind of saw how they come to Istanbul, did their Solana hacker house there, engage with developers, talk with them. Obviously, they at the time they have more limited treasury. Now they have huge treasury, but they still spent time on the developers and built that growth very, very organically, both for the liquidity and users and the developers. So I think that's really valuable. And we want to go through that same curve, basically, not the other way around, just like start with very high, then get lower, just like any other project in the space, but just grow organically. And then that creates more resonance with people that actually see your growth from day one to day hundreds. And there's enough applications they want to use, so they will come and use.
You bring up a really interesting point. I remember the early days of Solana. One of my friends actually he was the person that he started as a community moderator, and he became their main hackathon person, and he actually arranged and organized the very first, I think, 2 or 3 hackathons. They were virtual hackathons, or they were all online. And I remember talking to him one day asking, "Hey, how are registrations going?" And this was very early days, like, very, very early days. And he told me the number of registrants, and I was shocked because at the time I was very involved with the ETH Global team, and going to ETH Global hackathons, and he told me the number of registrations that they had, and I was just so surprised at how big it was. And that's the first time I started paying attention to the Solana ecosystem, is when he told me how many developers were registered. And then I learned later that it wasn't just developers, but it was actually just lots of other people registering, because their hackathons, they made them into not just hackathons, but they also had speakers. They also had panel discussions. Like, they created a very almost like a media arm that invited all types of participants. So it wasn't just developers, but there was also a lot of developers, a lot of normal people that just wanted to
Yes.
listen to content. And I think that was, at least for me, is when I started paying attention. It's like, okay, there's something going on over there that I didn't know about, that feels really organic. I can't ignore these guys. And
Yeah, for me, like I said,
yeah,
that moment happened after the FTX crash when they happened, like the Istanbul hacker house. I
yeah.
realized they actually spent a lot of money to the venue and everything, but they actually care. They are not faking it to just like look good. They did it to access developers and stuff. So I was really admired about their approach back then.
Let's talk about community building for Citrea. As we just discussed, there's all types of community members. There's developers, there's non-developers. I guess what's your plan for involving non-developers to become part of the community?
Yeah, hopefully, like I said, through applications. We have like a Discord community, a large, I will say, Twitter account that people actually following us. But like I said, eventually they need to use the applications. They should use the applications. So that's like one part of things where we are aligned with the applications. We know what they're building, and we can share with our community about what they're building. It's not like someone is doing something that I never heard of. Everyone building on Citrea, I personally know. So that I can talk with community about them and say that, okay, they're building this. It's really cool. So it's basically our way of building community. Just like doing marketing on Twitter and like other stuff, it onboards a lot of crypto native people. But at the same time, we are going to a lot of Bitcoin conferences, which is much less crypto native people there. It's not like an Dev Connect or like an Eat Global, right? It's just like a Bitcoiners coming there, and they're like, I was in Bitcoin Nashville where Trump spoke. There were a lot of kind of like American citizens coming just to see Trump. They don't know anything about Bitcoin, but they were looking to the booths, trying to understand what's going on. And we talk one by one with all of them, describe maybe Bitcoin to some. If they know about Bitcoin, we described how it actually works and how they can use it with Citrea more in the future. So it
That's
was a
really
really
cool.
good experience. Yeah, I think community building in general is just like about posting memes on Twitter and like boosting your Discord accounts. It's not us. But what we try to do, I personally try to do, is just like engage with users, developers, builders in person, one to
Hmm.
one, get to know them, and then just apply their feedback based on how we are doing, yeah, like is it good or bad and stuff.
You know, community building is really, really hard to do. And I think where a lot of crypto projects miss the mark is they look at engagement and then they stop there.
Yeah,
But what really needs to happen is that there needs to be organic, authentic engagement, and then the engagement needs to lead. It needs to lead to community, and so engagement becomes a stepping stone to community, not the other way around.
exactly.
And I think a lot of projects kind of miss that part. You know, they optimize, they really sub optimize for engagement, but then engagement never leads to community. Um, but it's also really, really hard to create community, and so it makes sense. Um, but becomes a really, really important part of any crypto project, especially as the project gets closer to mainnet in a token generation event, to have that community, um, and in that ecosystem. Um, oh, you know, as you've been building for the last 2 years, what are some lessons learned from your experience so far about
Mhm.
building a project in crypto?
Yeah, I think the one thing is about balancing the technical and non-technical stuff inside the company and like to the public as well. Because even though what we are building is technically very valuable, if there is no apps, if there is no users that wants to use the network, it doesn't mean anything. Like we just spend millions of dollars to development, which ends up having a ghost chain. That's not something that we definitely want to have. So starting the brand recognition earlier, starting the marketing earlier, starting the BD growth side of things earlier, for like a chain obviously is very very helpful. And for applications, I think also seeing that like some random applications has claiming to have like millions of users who trade on their platform, but they're most likely bots or like slippage bots, like MEV bots or whatever. It's just like don't get upset or like don't get down by just looking to the numbers and like, oh, they're getting a lot of users, I need to build something that will get same influential. I think most applications in like Web 2, they just target very specific user base and try to acquire that user base. And for both applications and chains, they need to be more focused rather than being generalists. They need to be opinionated towards one specific user base, built for their needs, build the best tool for their needs so that they become the users. And then maybe try to expand from there. But even from day one, if you try to target, oh, I want to have all the crypto users in my application, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's a really good lesson. And a lot of very technical, most technical founders they don't pay attention to community, business development, or marketing or growth until later. But it's actually one of the first things, probably one of the most
Yeah.
important things to focus on first.
Yeah, I think my CTO will get angry to me, but I think it's harder than developing the rollup itself. It's like because obviously the engineering is very very heavy, but after one point, you if you know what you are building, it's just like continuous building, right? You wake up and you know what to do. But branding, marketing, community is not something like that. You wake up, everything changed. Now you need to just create something new that will reach to more users that day because that day's topic is maybe different than what was yesterday's. And so it's, I would say, more dynamic, that needs more attention, which is personally, I get it was more hard for me in the beginning than doing engineering.
Yeah, it's hard work. It really is. Well, Orkun, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. I'm very excited about what you guys are doing at Citrea, and I'm really looking forward to this Bitcoin renaissance. And I envision dozens, maybe even hundreds of projects building on Citrea as you guys launch mainnet. Um, and very excited for what's to come.
Yes, hopefully. Thank you for having me, Peter. I really enjoyed the chat. It was also good to remind myself some of the points that I did in the past and I'm doing right now. So really grateful for the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.